The exact origins of life on Earth are still a matter of debate. Rationalists and scientists theorize the fabrication of proteins through remarkably rare and resplendent chemistry. Others suggest that life here began out there, brought from an asteroid or comet impact containing frozen microbes within. Some believe and assert that we are the creations of a higher intelligence, either divine or maybe superintelligent. Perhaps this video, in fact all of your perceived reality, is, in fact, a simulation. This video explores life, intelligence, and governing social and moral codes that leads to the empires available to you upon a new game of Stellaris. It's a long one, so as custom, there will be an itinerary allowing you to skip ahead if you already know some of the content but are unsure on others. Let us now move on to the live tutorial. Good luck and Godspeed. For at the end of this tutorial series, there will be an exam with prizes. Keep that in mind as we move into the first act of God. In 6 days, he created the heavens and the earth, and on the 7th, he played Stellaris. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night, depending on where you are on this good green earth of ours. My phone keeps pinging. Someone's obviously very, very fond of me. Throwing that away. Am I going to re-record it? No, I'm not going to re-record it. One take. Kane. That's my name. It's not really, but, you know, we'll go with it. Stellaris, tutorial number 2. The first act of God. Make sure you have a lovely cup of tea or maybe coffee or a hot chocolate perhaps, you know, whatever it takes your fancy. I've got it here. It's very important when we're learning or teaching to have adequate beverages at hand. Bit of ASMR on with the tea there. Lovely. Right, so today we're going to be talking about species in Stellaris and the governments and societies that they form. So, we are not actually going to go into the game itself. We are not going to go into a galaxy, we're not going to fly around spaceships, because all of that comes later. We need to look at the foundation, the species, the very beginning. New game. So, we've got all of these races. You'll have, hopefully, a good proportion of them. I've got all the DLC for Stellaris, with the exception of the lithoids, so I can't make intelligent rocks just yet. I've made a couple of species already, and empires. They're very fun. If you want to pause the video and look at the little blurb I've written, you can do so. Otherwise, let's crack on. So we're going to take one that you will definitely have. This starts with the base game, so if you've got the game, you'll have this. And you can follow along if you like. Make sure you have a notepad open, or notepad.exe, or a physical notepad with a pen, preferably a fountain pen, because fountain pens are lovely and they make a lovely scratchy sound when you write with them, and it makes you feel so eloquent and so wonderfully sophisticated. So, United Nations of Earth. Let's look at this screen. This is a very, very important screen because it has 3 important elements to it. So, the 3 important things to look at in this screen are the type of planet that the people of the United Nations of Earth live on. Is a continental world. There are 9 different kinds of world. If we just quickly look at some other species, you will see that the Kalic Cooperative live on a tropical world, the Hasbuzen Syndicates on a savanna world, etc. There are 9 in all. The United Nations of Earth, the humans, live on Earth, which is a continental world. Look out of the window, you'll see something quite similar. Now, let's look at the species itself. Humanity. How do you define a species? Well, you do a few things. You give it a name. You give it a type. Humanoid. Humans are humanoid. Of humans. Probably Latin somewhere. We give them a portrait, and then, most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, you give them some traits. You give them some things that make them them. Some are good, some are bad. Obviously, the greeny, turquoisey, cyany color is good, and the red is not so good. Now, you might have seen some wonderful tooltips, as I said in the last tutorial. Tooltips are your friend in this game. And they will explain what each of these traits mean. And when we get to creating a brand new species where we can explore all of these mechanics, we'll see that there are a huge amount of traits to pick from. So, importantly, we must remember that we're designing a species here. We're not thinking about the governments or what they believe in. We're just thinking about the biological proclivities and vulnerabilities of a form of life, in this case, humans. So what are humans? What are they good at? What are they not so good at? Well, they're good at adapting to their environment. This gives us a habitability bonus of plus 10%. What does that mean? We'll cover that in more detail in the colonization module of this wonderful tutorial series. But it means that we get a plus 10% bonus if we're inhabiting a planet that's not a continental world. It still won't be ideal, but it'll be better than it would be otherwise. So that's great. Gives us a good start before we can start terraforming and bending nature to our will. We can also see here that they're nomadic. Humans are quite nomadic. What does this mean? It means that pop growth from immigration plus 15%. That means nothing to you, and that's okay. Again, we're going to cover this more in the tutorial for colonization. But immigration pops moving between different planets of their own accord. Trying to make a better life for themselves. Living out on the frontier, moving out of the old big cities, and living on the land and harvesting space pigs and pheasants and things like that. So they're 15% more likely to do that. That's good. It's good, because it means you've got to spend less on resettlement. And there's actually a bonus for that too, minus 25%. Lot cheaper. Lots cheaper, much cheaper. Resettlement, what's that? It's if you have a planet that needs lots of people on it, and you don't have any people on it, you can press a button to just put billions of people onto ships and send them off. They don't get a choice, they don't get a vote, you just send them off, and they go, and they take the jobs in the new world you've colonized. And what does that help? It helps growth, helps economic growth, and that's important. So, nomadic, good. Again, it's green. Green is good. Red, bad. So these wonderful things are offset by the fact that humans need 10% more toasters than a species that doesn't need 10% more toasters. So they have a malus as well. We've got 2 benefits and a malus. Seemingly have no concept of frugality and are prone to useless consumption. Sounds about right to me. So that's the species. We'll look at this in more detail when we create our own trainee empire, and you can follow along if you like. But in a nutshell, that's how a species is defined in Stellaris, by the traits that it has. As you get into the game, you can research genetic engineering technologies, and you can change these traits. You can take out the bad ones. Sometimes you can even take out the good ones and replace them with other good ones. We'll have a look at why you might want to do that, and how indeed you do it in a later module. So, that's the species element. And again, if you wanted to explore, we can have a look. Obviously, these two have the same species. Others have entirely different ones, and sometimes they might have more. So the UNE, United Nations of Earth, only has 3. Orbis Customer Synergies, which is a mega corporation, has 5, and they're all different. Well, they have adaptive as well, so that's very nice. But we can see that we've got a lot more there. Some more malices, but also, another benefit as well. Let's go back to the UNE. Now, we have a look at this part of the screen now, which defines the civilization of the Empire. So we have a government structure, a democracy. We have some flavor text here, representative democracy, which is pretty much the exact same as the nation that you are most likely living in now, if you have free access to YouTube, where people send politicians to a big room, and then they shout at each other until they find some way to make a law. So that's a democracy. Holds an election every 10 years to select a new ruler. We'll talk about the precise mechanics of leaders, be they political leaders or fleet admirals, generals in your military, or scientists. Leaders are a very important part of Stellaris, and in democracies, the leader who leads your entire empire is going to be replaced every 10 years if they can't win their own elections. That brings some bonuses and also some issues, as well, as you can't rely on the same ruler every time you want to do something. After the governmental system, we have some civics. Now, these are semi-defined by the guiding philosophies of the nation and give bonuses to various aspects. So we've got here, we can see Beacon of Liberty and Idealistic Foundation. What does this mean? Let's look at Beacon of Liberty. Wonderful little lighthouse symbol there. This society is a shining beacon of light in a sea of darkness. So that gives a global modifier to our empire, allowing us to produce 15% more unity than we would otherwise be able to do. So many structures on colonial worlds and your homeworld itself will produce unity. We use unity to unlock traditions in the tradition tree. We'll have a whole module covering that, as well as aspirations and galactic ambitions that come towards the late game and are very powerful indeed. So that's a very good bonus, plus 15% unity. We love that. Let's look at the next one, Idealistic Foundation. Founded on strong idealistic values. Humans in the United Nations of Earth have hope, and this translates to a general citizen pop happiness of plus 5%. And the important thing is, obviously, when you have an empire, you can have other species be population of your empire through migration treaties or absorbing other empires through vassalage or through military action. So the important thing here is it says citizen pop happiness, not just humans. Everyone who has a citizen status in the United Nations of Earth will get a plus 5% boost to their happiness, and that translates to greater productivity, less likelihood of revolts. It's all good. Then we get to perhaps the most important aspects of a civilization, and those are its guiding philosophies. Really what defines right from wrong, and whether such ideas as right and wrong are important. So there are several to choose from. We'll have a look at all of them in the Species Creator. In the United Nations of Earth, there are two main guiding philosophies. The UNE is xenophilic. They love their neighbors. And this gives us some empire modifiers as well as some game rules. And that's very important to remember. So we can see here the game rules are in the cyan/turquoise text. Increased opinion for other species. That means that if you are playing as a nation other than the United Nations of Earth and you are negotiating with the United Nations of Earth, they're going to be more receptive to you because they love you, because you are Xenos, and they love Xenophiles. They love the unknown. Then we've got a few things that we can't do if we are playing as the United Nations of Earth. We can't have a no refugees policy, so sometimes you'll get refugee crises when there's a big war in some other part of the galaxy and you've got a bunch of refugees turn up. You can't just turn them away because you're xenophilic. You can't enslave species, and you can't displace them either. What's displacement? If you conquer another nation's planet, through military action or just absorbing them through shrewd diplomacy, you can't just nick their land, basically. So displacement is, again, it's an empire policy. We'll cover that in more detail in another tutorial. And then we have egalitarian, but we don't just have egalitarian, we have fanatic egalitarian. Every guiding philosophy called ethics in the game has a fanatic variant, and that's represented by this wonderfully orangey color here, and it's, as you might expect, a magnified version of the base ethic. So of course the base ethic here being egalitarianism, the ideal that everyone is born equal. And we've got a couple of laws here, a couple of game rules, as you can see there in cyan. So, fanatic egalitarian societies have to be democracies. End of, you can't have any other government type. Have to be democracies. However, you can have a utopian living standard. What's a living standard? It's basically a benefits system. So if you have pops in your empire that are unemployed, you can either have them be, downtrodden and unhappy and, poverty and it's bad, or you can have a different kind of living standard, such as a utopian living standard, which is allowed for by fanatic egalitarianism, which allows pops who don't have jobs to start generating things like science and unity and wonderful things, because instead of being downtrodden and economically crippled, they have money to go and spend time in the library and go to pubs and have wonderful philosophical discussions and move society forward in their own way. Also, we've got a couple of modifiers there. Specialist output plus 10% there on the bottom. Fantastic. So specialists are sort of the equivalent of the middle class in your empire, and their output of 10% means that we're going to get 10% more resources from all of their jobs, which is just wonderful. We've also got a faction influence gain. We'll talk about what factions are in another module, but they're a key source of influence. Influence, of course, being the resource that allows you to claim star systems, to maintain diplomatic relationships, to build megastructures, and to enact policies. So, very important resource, and we get plus 50% from our internal factions. We'll talk exactly about how that works in another module. So, we've covered a lot here in quite a short space of time. I know that I can talk quite quickly, so I would encourage you to rewind if you would like to. Hear it all again, because in a moment we are going to dive in and we're going to create a brand new empire from scratch, and we can use that to really explore some of the key tenets that I've talked to you about today. So we're going to take a short break. You'll have a wonderful advert, unless you've got ad blocker, in which case it'll just skip over and it will look very strange. So don't have ad blocker and enjoy your ads. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Hope you're still feeling fabulous. Here we are. Create new empire. We're going in at the deep end. We're going to start life with buttons in Stellaris. Select. So, here we are. We're going to make a brand new species and a brand new civilization. It doesn't really matter what we do here. Obviously, we're just going to use this as a good opportunity to explore the mechanics available. Again, I've got all the DLC in the game, with the exception of lithoids, so that gives us a lot of different appearances for our new species. We can see here on the left-hand side, basically a checklist of things we have to do in order to make a species and a civilization. So let's make it a big mushroom. That looks quite nice. It's like they're born in a fabulous coat. Love that. So we're going to take that as a portrait. Then we need to give them a name. Looks like a lovely coat there. So we're going to call these the Velveteers. Actually, just oopsie, just Velveteers, Velveteer, and then their plural is Velveteers, and then their adjective, Velveteran. I am human. I'm going to say she is Velveteran. And we can add a big biography and write lots of lovely text here and create a science fiction opus if we wanted to. Now I have to delete all of this and really flesh out the lore if we want to. Again, I talked about the story weaving aspect of this game, and that's just another great example of it. Next! Name lists, again, it's flavor text. We can choose, these basically are just lists of names that will come into play for our ships, our planets, and our leaders. We've got some humanoids here. We don't want that. Let's see if we've got some fungoids. There we are, fungoids. Let's do this one. This looks like the ISS Obab Ib Halav Adfin, etc. Lovely names. So we're going to do that. We can also do our ship prefix. So if you are in the United States, your naval vessels will be USS. If you are in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, they will be HMS. So we're going to do something like Velvet Coat Vessel, VCV. So it sounds a bit French, VCV. The VCV, Obabib. VCV, Mogonava Avab. Wonderful, strong names. Next. And here we are. So everything before then was really just flavor text. Doesn't really matter. Here we get the actual gameplay mechanics. What defines one species from another. We've got 2 points and 5 picks to start with. What does that mean? Well, we can see here that there is a number to the right of all of these different traits that we can apply to our species. And they come in 3 different categories. We've got boosts, identified by the lovely turquoise/cyan color. We've got malices, identified by the terrifying red color. And then we've got sort of super bonuses, identified by this more lit up blue color here. We can see that each one has a particular cost, and that cost feeds back to our trait points, and this is sort of like a budget. You can see that positive traits cost us points, super ones cost us more points, and negative traits can actually refund us. And that's why we have trait picks as well, because what we can do is we can break our budget with really expensive ones like extremely adaptive, and then we need to get 2 points back so we can have something negative like slow breeders, and then we've balanced it out. We can also pick 3 more, so we could go for talented, and then slow learners. But now we've got 1 pick left, but no points, because if we picked a positive one, we'd break the budget, and if we picked a negative one, we'd have a budget left over, and what's the point in that? So what traits? What traits are best? What should you pick for your civilization? There are so many. What's best? What should I do? Well, that's something that I cannot tell you. It all depends on what you want your species to be really good at. What do you want their natural proclivities to be? For example, at the top here, we have agrarian, plus 15% food. This can mean 2 different things. It means that if you have a lot of farmers, they're going to produce a lot and then plus 15% more food. Or it means that you can effectively have 15% less farmers to sustain the same amount of population, and use that extra 15% workforce to do things like generate energy, or mine minerals, or work in alloy foundries. Very important there. And you can have a look. Obviously, every single one has a wonderful tooltip. So this is pretty much the same as agrarian, but for energy credits. Industrious, they're pretty much the same, but for minerals. And then we've got intelligent, bonuses for research, thrifty, bonuses for trade value. And then we've got natural proclivities in one of the 3 core scientific pathways: engineering, physics, and society research. Just sort of, sociology. Adaptivity, growth speed, talented, leadership capabilities, unity output, strength in terms of military, as well as a slight bonus to basic resources such as minerals and energy production, as well as working the farms. And then the counterbalances to that as well. Not thinking, if you're not anticipating going to war at any point, then maybe you can get away with having weak. So minus 20% to army damage, but it gives you a point that you can then use on something else, like communal. Less housing usage. How does housing work? We'll talk about that in the colonization module. Repugnant. That's always fun. Very bad, though. You need amenities. Again, we'll talk about that in the colonization. So, through a combination of these traits, you define what your species is good at. Now, having a malice doesn't mean that there is some huge, unstoppable hurdle that gets in the way of your species. You can get rid of these malices throughout the course of a game through genetic engineering. So, for example, if we had quarrelsome, We do have a hit to Unity production, minus 10%, but we're still getting 90% of what we would have, so it's not like we can't generate any Unity at all. So don't be too worried about many of these. Just make sure that you don't pick something that's going to directly contrast with how you're planning to play the game. For example, if you are going to be quite, well, let's look at wasteful. If you're going to be quite tight as an empire, very streamlined, then you're going to want to minimize the amount of minerals and labor that you're going to be put into making toasters. That's not going to be helped if you have to pay a plus 10% cost in toasters to every member of your species. Not good. So have a think about it. Have a play around in this game and see what works best for the empire that you're trying to create. So we're just going to pick a few here. Let's make our wonderful molluscoids. What would molluscoids be good at? They're definitely going to be ingenious. Let's make them thrifty as well. And then we've got 3 picks left and 3 points. So actually, let's see what we can do. Three picks left. Are we going to break the budget here? We might break the budget. But we'll figure it out. They're definitely going to be ingenious. They love to breed. They're quick learners. And then we need to get 3 points back, which actually we can do. So we're not going to break the budget. We need to find a -2. Repugnant. Not a good one. You need amenities. But they're repugnant. Oh dear. And they're also fleeting. Oh dear. So we've got full 5 here. Full set. No points or picks left. Fantastic. Now, next, name and class. So now we're looking at the kind of planet that our species grew up on, and therefore what kind of planet is going to be best suited to them when we go out among the stars. So we can make the name of our homeworld. We can call it whatever we like, such as Fungopia, which is a wonderful name, of course. Or we can just click this button and make one up, if you can't be bothered. Mock. Definitely. The planet Mock around the star Makar. If you're role-playing as the human race, which many people do, I do myself, you can select the Sol system. We just might need to delete that. Yep, we can have the Sol system. So obviously the star name will be Sol, and the homeworld will be Earth. Or maybe you're planning to create a Venusian empire, for example. And then that star system will be modelled after the Sol system in real life, which is lovely, but we're not doing that at the moment. So we're going to go back to Mock around Makar, which is wonderful. And then we just have a random solar system. We can make it a trinary star system, or just completely random, which is lovely. And now we get to our 9 types of planet. Now, you can pick any of them. It doesn't matter at all. There's no sort of, specific benefits or disadvantages between an Arctic world and a Savannah world. It's just that if you start on a Savannah world, you're only going to be able to be most happy on other Savannah worlds, particularly in the early parts of the game where you can't terraform and you can't develop technologies to increase your species' habitability. So it really is up to you. Let's make it so our wonderful Velveteers love it on arid worlds. Dry, rocky, Velveteer. Fantastic. And then we can choose city appearance, and that only changes what's in the background here. More flavor text. Let's make it something like that. That looks quite nice. And then we can click next again. And here we are. An immensely important screen. Prepare thy notepad, ladies and gentlemen, because this is where it all comes together. So we've got our ethics governing philosophy. We're going to start here on the left, and then we're going to move our way across to the right, because what we select here is going to define what we can select here, and therefore define what we can select here. So we start on the left, and we move to the right. So we can see here, we've got our, as we saw earlier, we've got our basic, not basic, but standard belief systems, and then the fanatic variants of them. There is a budget here as well, so we've got 3 points. Each basic costs 1 point. Each fanatic costs 2. So we can either select 3 from the inner ring, or 1 from the inner ring, and 1 from the outer ring. And we're going to have a look at exactly what each one does. That's very important. It's going to take ages, but it's going to be fantastic, and just the knowledge is going to start seeping in. It's fantastic. First of all, however, let's address this button in the middle. A Gestalt consciousness. A Gestalt consciousness means that there is only a singular mind in your entire species. Be it a hive mind or a... Well, I mean, I can't think of another phrase for that. It's a hive mind, basically. So if we select that, we've got the hive mind authority. And they have their own civic systems as well. We can see all of these only for hive mind authorities. Or we can have a machine consciousness, such as, you know, Skynet, or the Borg from Star Trek, a singular consciousness. And we can see here there are civics attached to them as well that are specialized. So Gestalt consciousnesses, that's really hard to say. Gestalt consciousnesses, there we are, have a large amount of rules here. So you can't use several government functions. In fact, you can only use these 2. Your rulers are immortal, which is great. You don't have to worry about happiness. You don't have to worry about factions, which is all brilliant. You can use the no retreat war doctrine if you really want to get very angry. And also, very importantly, you can't have other pops in your empire. If they're not connected to the hive mind, they'll die. So that is an important thing to consider. If you were to lose a war, or lose a planet in a war, and many pops were separated from your hive mind, your centralized consciousness, they'd die. So even if you were to later get the planet back, they'd all be gone. You'd have to start again. So, some things to consider there. Obviously, it's considered an advanced way to play, so there is no tutorial available for Gestalt Consciousness playthroughs. There are also some modifiers there. Monthly Influence +1, obviously offsetting the fact that you can't make factions. We'll talk about factions in another module. War Exhaustion. You can basically fight wars for longer. That's all you do. Just keep fighting wars. We're going to disable that for now. We can see all of these other authority types have come back into play. So, ethics, we're going to go round the wheel. We're going to talk about each belief system in a sort of storytelling role-play perspective, and then we're going to have a look at exactly what the impacts of certain ethics are in a gameplay setting. So, militarism. A respect for military institutions and the ideals of discipline and strength. Xenophobia. Not liking people who don't look and speak like you do. Egalitarianism. The idea that all people are born equally and everyone should have a chance at happiness. Materialism. The idea that things that you can see and touch and directly manipulate are more important than sort of concepts such as spirituality, religion, or metaphysical ideas. Pacifism, the idea that militaries and warfare are symptoms of a society gone wrong and should be abolished at all costs. Xenophilia, what we do not understand is an opportunity for learning and growth, so we love anything that doesn't look or sound like we do. Authoritarianism, some people are born to rule, others are born to be ruled. And spiritualism, what we cannot see, what we instead feel in our hearts, is what is most important in life. So, that's the ring. Let's have a look at what exactly each one means. So militarists, although you can be a militarist empire without being very aggressive, it does give empire modifiers to enable war to be cheaper. So the influence cost of claiming other nations' star systems, which of course can be a casus belli for war, is 10% less, and also your ships fire 10% more than other ships, which is very useful indeed. The fanatic variant increases both of those modifiers by an extra 10%, making wars even cheaper, and your ships even more pewier. You can also see a no-retreat war doctrine has been unlocked. War doctrines are basically swathing policies that define how your fleet acts. We'll cover that particularly in the fleet module of this tutorial. And the no-retreat war doctrine basically means that if you lose a battle, you're going to lose everything, but your ships will fight to the last man or velveteer. So that can be very useful. You can't use it unless you have a militarist ethic, be it the fanatic or regular version. Xenophobia. Xenophobia means that you can do a lot of things and you can't do a lot of other things. You can see there are quite a few rules now in the tooltip in Cyan. So purge, that's, yeah, it is what you think it is. So you can do that. You can also, well, yeah, you could do that second thing as well. Other species, of course, are not going to like you very much. And you're not going to like them very much. That's the whole idea of a xenophobic empire. Consequently, if you have pops of other species inside your empire borders, they can't be citizens, they can't serve as leaders in the military, and you can't allow a policy to allow refugees into your borders either. Very isolationist, very xenophobic. It gives us some modifiers down there. Influence cost for star bases, so that's claiming new star systems that aren't claimed by anyone else, is minus 20%, and our pops grow 10% faster, which is very nice, I suppose. And we see those bonuses are doubled for the fanatic versions. Then we've got egalitarianism. So we can see that we can't use, if we were to click this, we can't use autocratic forms of government, such as dictatorial or imperial forms of government. It does give us some empire modifiers, as we saw with the United Nations of Earth, a gain for faction influence, and output of our specialists. Those are doubled with the fanatic version. With the fanatic version, you have democracy. That's it. You can't do any others. You can be an egalitarian megacorp if you like, or an oligarchy even. And you can see there we've got some very different civics that we'll move on to shortly. Materialist. Materialist is basically about the usage of robots and living tools. So you can allow a living standard called academic privilege, which gives extra bonuses to research output. You can't outlaw artificial intelligence, no matter how sentient they become, and you can't outlaw robotic workers. You can see the Empire modifier there, plus 5% research speed, which is great, but also a 10% reduction in the cost of robotic pops inside your empire, which is pretty fan-dabby-dozy. We can have fanatic materialists, which again doubles the bonuses. We've got exactly the same laws there as well. Pacifism. So again, we've got a couple of rules there. Both of these rules are empire policies. So we've got a war policy that we can change. We can have a policy that allows us to have whatever wars we want, where we can just claim other star systems and other empires and go to war over it, and you know, just keep going as we may wish to. We can't do that if we're pacifists. We can only have wars in particular circumstances, and we'll talk about what those are in future modules. We've got modifiers for administrative capacity. We touched on that in the last module, talking about the interface. We'll also talk about it in the economics module coming up. And we've got +5 stability, which is excellent. That means that our planets are less likely to descend into crime and mayhem, which is fantastic, because everyone's just busy, you know, hugging each other and giving high fives, which is fantastic. We've got, of course, got a fanatic variant. The idea of a fanatic pacifist is a bit of an oxymoron, but there we are. Empire modifiers are doubled, and we can see a theme starting to develop here. Xenophilia. So again, we talked about this with the United Nations of Earth. So we can't do a lot of the things that we would be able to do if we were xenophobes. We benefit from better trade value and a reduction in the influence cost of democratic arrangements with other neighbouring empires. Also, if we are playing against or with, or you know, if there was an AI empire that was xenophilic, they would like us more because they are xenophilic and they love us. You can see there the modifiers are doubled for the fanatic variant. Then authoritarianism. So we allow a stratified economy living standards. We talked about living standards on a couple of other ones, such as the utopian one there, academic privilege one there. Stratified economy, basically those at the top get lots, those at the bottom get nothing. Essentially, you can do that thing that's the second one down that I'm pretty sure I'd get demonetized if I said. If you wanted to, much like xenophobes, you can't use democratic government forms. So it's very much the opposite of that. Can't use autocratic, can't use democratic. We'll talk about the authorities in a moment. And we've got some modifiers there. Monthly influence, plus 0.5, which is very good indeed. Obviously, with the fanatic version, that's going to be plus 1. And basic workers, because they're working for their lives. If they miss a paycheck, they'll die. They won't really, just roleplay. Get a plus 5% output and plus 10% on the fanatic version. So your basic resources are going to be energy and minerals and food, which are all very, very useful. Spiritualism. You can build temple buildings. Can't build that with any of the others. So temple buildings provide a host of bonuses. You build them on your planets. But you can't give artificial intelligence AI rights. You can't give them citizen rights, no matter how intelligent and sapient they may become. You got bonuses to unity, as well as the cost of edicts. Edicts are basically focuses that you want to push your civilization down. They can give broad bonuses to a whole host of different elements of your civilization. We'll talk about them in future modules. And of course, with the fanatic version, we've got those bonuses doubled up. So there we are. That's the whole ring. That was a lot of words, wasn't it? Important thing to consider, you obviously can't choose conflicting ideologies. You can't be xenophilic and xenophobic. You can't be spiritualist and materialist, and you can't be pacifist and militarist, because that would be silly. But any other combination is totally allowed. You can be spiritualist, xenophobic, and pacifist. Or you can be militarist and fanatically authoritarian. Or you can be fanatically spiritualist and xenophobic. Or you can be Gestalt. If you're Gestalt, you're nothing else. Because you don't have philosophies, you don't have debates and questions, you just are. You just are. Two of these philosophical pathways, I would say, limit the authority that you can have, your governmental structure. So obviously those are authoritarianism and egalitarianism. This is a very important decision to make. Let's have a look at the authorities that we can install and the bonuses that come with them. So we're going to start off with democracy. We saw that with the United Nations of Earth. Every 10 years there's an election. That means that every 10 years, one of your leaders, be they a fleet admiral or a scientist or a planetary governor, will become your new ruler. The ruler in your empire comes with their own bonuses, which can make certain things cheaper, certain things faster, certain things better. So that's democracy every 10 years. Oligarchy, essentially an election, but only voted for by the very rich and powerful. Every 20 years, there's an election. Otherwise, the two are relatively the same. Then we have autocratic governments. So, for example, if we had a fanatic authoritarian, we can't even have oligarchies. The idea of votes disgusts us. So if we just click that, we'll see those are disabled. And we've got a dictator. Pretty simple. You rule until you die. Or an empire. So imperial. Upon the death of a ruler, a designated successor becomes a new ruler. So with a dictatorship, there is an election after a ruler has died. With imperial governments, it is a monarchy. It is whoever their firstborn is, and the successor will be chosen whenever a ruler becomes very comfortable on the throne. And we can see there's some lovely flavoured text here. We can see how our nation is going to be described as well. So a despotic empire. If we change these around, we can see it changes. So theocratic monarchy, star empire, Xenophiles and authoritarians, that doesn't change anything. Irenic monarchy. Hegemony. We can also change that and move that around to Star Empire. Or... Oh, let me do that. Military junta. It's all fun. See how many you can find. Theocratic oligarchy. Lovely. Alright, let's get rid of these. We also have Mega Corporation, if you have the Megacorp expansion pack. So that is pretty much the same as an oligarchy. It does have a whole bunch of different civics. You can see here on the right-hand side. We'll get into those. But also, we've got some empire modifiers there, plus 20% administrative capacity. Which is, we'll talk about that in the economics module, but also it means that if we go above that capacity, so if you have too many planets, too many districts on those planets, it's going to hurt us big time, plus 50% cost for that empire sprawl. Right, now we move over to civics. We're almost there, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a long road, but my time is finally here. Right, okay, so our civics here, you can see the special colour. For these 4 kinds, you see they all change. Special colour for this one, and if we are Gestalt, special colours for these. What is a civic? It's a definition or a description of a society, of how it operates, what its traditions are, basically. So we can see we've got a lot of things to choose from. We can pick 2 at most. It's not like traits where we can pick bad ones. We can just pick 2 and that's it. We can change them in the course of the game. Some we can't change, like this one. Life Seeded gives us a Gaia world instead of an arid world to start on. If you see if we pick that, it changes. We can't change that after the start of the game. So again, I could go through every single one of these. It would take ages, and we don't have that much time. So, again, tooltips are your best friends. So we can see here the top one, Byzantine bureaucracy. Amenities, down. Housing usage, down. Can construct a special building that produces administration jobs. What does that mean? We'll cover that in a future tutorial. I'm saying that a lot. Need to get those future tutorials, not in the future anymore, in the present. I'll get on that. And we've got corvée systems, cutthroat politics, etc. Efficient bureaucracy, very nice one. Have a look through. Have a look through. Different ones will be available for different authorities. So, for example, we can see here, let's take meritocracy. Let's take meritocracy. And then if we go to imperial, we'll see that meritocracy is now not available, because it doesn't really fit with an imperial civilization. Instead, we've got aristocratic elite. For example, now we've got governor level cap increased by 1. Capital buildings can replace administrators with nobles. So if you're going for like sort of a feudal empire or 40k esque Imperium of Man, then you definitely have that. So we pick a couple of these. So we could pick that. We could pick mining guilds, best minerals for miners, +1 per miner, not bad at all. And then we've got everything. Well, I talk about feudal. There you go. Feudal, done. It's now a feudal empire. Fantastic. We can also add life seeded to that as well. Efficient bureaucracy. We've already done life seeded. Mining guilds. It's just fantastic. It's all there. Very interesting ones with so Mega Corporation obviously has different ones as well that affect your gameplay in as a Mega Corporation. So criminal heritage, you're basically a space empire mafia, fantastic. Or we can be a trade league, or I want to change the text. How can we change that? It's just trade league. I was hoping there were more. Oh well. And then of course we've got unique ones from Machine and Hive Worlds as well. So not Hive Worlds, Hive Minds. So we can have a devouring swarm. Basically the Zerg. Or the Tyranids. A lot of this, I think, was inspired by 40k. So if you want to be Tyranids, that's that. Ravenous Hive. That's one that you can't add or remove after the start of the game. There are a few like that. Machine Empires. Determined Exterminators. You want to be Skynet? That's it. Start off in a tomb world. Very much the Civic to start with if you want to be the machines from the Matrix. which I just love. Very much an idea borrowed from the Terminator, borrowed from the Matrix. The idea that a machine uprising destroys their creators and then is left to run amok of its own accord. Again, such a potent part of history. It can't be just removed after the start of the game. So all things to consider. After we've picked our ethics, so if we don't want to be a Gestalt conscious, let's say we want to be a militarist and materialist regime that also likes to build temples, and we are cutthroat politicians, and we have a distinguished admiralty. Lovely. That's it. Empire's set up. We've got, actually no, not yet. We've got one ethic point left. We can't be materialist and spiritualist. So let's say that we love our neighbours as well. Fantastic. All done. Pick an authority. Let's be an oligarchy. And next. Done. The rest of it, it's all just flavor text. So we can pick our advisor voice that's going to be next to us throughout the entire game. We can have the original classic one.
Priority alert. Please disregard the contents of my previous message.
Just so many memories. Or we can be orcs. Beautiful.
My boys is ready.
Ready! Fantastic. I mean, there are loads to choose from. You can be based on your government, so the game will decide for us which would be most appropriate.
It is a good day to die.
I don't like that one. It sounds like it was recorded like as an afterthought. There's lots of static.
Only in battle can the true mettle of any sentient organism be measured. Have at thee.
Yeah, not a fan. If you want to be militarist, I'd go for this one.
This channel is now under military control. Obey all instructions transmitted here and report any insurgent activity to the nearest occupation officer. Have a nice day.
Oh, that's chilling. You got your spiritualists.
Thinking machines are an affront to nature. These profane constructs must never be allowed to... Oh, wait.
Meta. Ruthless conglomerate.
To live is to consume.
Very Wayland Yutani. Wonderful. And then possibly the best.
Self-destruct sequence initiated. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Lovely. So, you pick whichever. Authoritarian's nice and fun.
Maintaining state cohesion as we venture into space presents a unique challenge. We shall face the challenge head on, and we shall be stronger for it.
Funnily enough, the authoritarian one is British. I wonder why that is. Then we pick our empire name. We can randomize it. So it'll be based on our species. So we've got Velveteer Compact, Velveteer Interplanetary Pact, Velveteer Union, Velveteer Coalition, all manners of Velveteers. The Great Velveteer Commonwealth, that sounds nice. And they are known as the Velveteerans. We go next, we then pick our flag. We're using a mod here that gives us additional options for flags. But yeah, pick your favourite. Let's pick that one. Looks nice. And then primary and secondary colours, I quite like purple. So we'll have primary purple and secondary, let's do it on a nice bed of white. Looks very nice indeed. We can pick a different background for it. Let's have this one. Looks very, very Velveteer. So we do that. Pick what kinds of ship models we're going to use. Let's use Arthropoid. I like that. Looks nice. That's it. Starting ruler is going to be called Hadad Uvi Ipav. Their ruler title will be Archon. And then we can choose what color they are. They're going to be blue and emerald. Or maybe black and blue, or maybe even red and black. 280 rooms. Okay, I must have I must have put a mod on that adds 300 rooms. There are not usually 300 rooms, but that looks nice. Let's just have them in a cave somewhere. That's very nice. Next, and then done. Save. We have just created not only a form of life, but also the Great Velveteer Commonwealth. Ah, what a day it's been. Very productive. I know, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a long road. It's been a long tutorial. I've been talking very quickly. You're probably going to have to rewind it and do it again. But I hope that together we've gone down a path of creating something special. And more than anything, I hope that you've enjoyed this tutorial. Please do subscribe if you want to check the rest of the series out. You're going to see a link to it shortly. If you're not subscribed, this would be a great time to do so. The button's right there. Just click the button. And if you liked the video, if you thought that's a competently made video, that's not too bad at all, Mr. Kane, whoever you are, then why don't you click the little thumbs up button? Because that tells YouTube that I'm not completely worthless, which is important. Most thanks to the patrons that are on the bottom of the screen now. Without them, this video project would simply not be possible. If you'd like to join their ranks, please do have a look at patreon.com/NovaKane. And with that, I will bid you, until next time, a very good morning, a very good afternoon, good evening, and of course, a good night.